Amen. So Genesis 30, 25 through 43. You know, sometimes I wish I could skip around like other folks do. This is not a very fun passage. Just because there's nothing wrong with it, it's not bad or anything, but it's hard to get it. It's hard to see how it applies to me. It's hard to see how it applies to us because it's really strange. There's some strange elements that go on here. So first, let's walk through where we have come from. What's the theme of Genesis? I've asked this 4 or 5 times, and you all have answered, so I know you know the answer. What's the theme? If you could, from Genesis 1 all the way to Genesis 30, if you had to pick one theme, one sentence to sum up what we've been looking at, what is Genesis about? It's about the promise. It's about His faithfulness to His promise. It's about Him making sure that His word will come to pass no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's armies that are hindering it, or if it's the sin of the covenant bearer that's hindering it, or if it's circumstances that's hindering it. We've seen God intervene over and over and over again in Abraham's life and Isaac's life, and we've seen it in Jacob's life as well, even through his conniving ways. I don't know how else to explain it, but after a while, I know you're going to get sick of hearing about God's faithfulness to His promise. I hope you don't get sick of it, because that's the basis of our salvation in the gospel in Jesus Christ and those things. But this is what this book is about, all the way up until the end. And then at the beginning of Exodus, as the people of Israel go into exile into Egypt, you know what that's about? That shows that God has kept His promise. There's this huge nation, this huge multitude. They have prospered. They have been blessed. There's many as the sand of the seashore, and they're going into exile, just like God promised in Abraham in Genesis 15 when He gave the covenant. They will go to a country that's not their own, and I will keep them there for 500 years, and then I'll bring them back to this land. So it's all about God keeping His word, keeping His promise. And again, tonight we're going to see this really strange account, but really the root of what we're going to see as we look at this is that God is faithful in all circumstances. Once again, we're going to see that there's not really a hero in this story other than God. He is the hero of the story. So the last time we looked at Genesis chapter 30, we actually did the end of 29 and the beginning of 30. What was going on? What was happening? You ought to remember that title. It's an easy one to remember. Baby Wars. Yeah, you got that one. The Baby Wars. So God told Jacob that He would bless him at Bethel. He showed him Jacob's ladder, the staircase to heaven. He showed him that He gave him the promise, I'll bless you, bring you back to this land. I won't leave you until all these things are fulfilled. And then Jacob gets swindled into working 14 years for 2 wives, only one that he wanted, but Laban changed the bride at the last minute and then swindled him into getting another 7 years to marry Rachel. And so now he has these wives and these maidservants that are with them. And the last time we were here, that's basically what we saw, was all of these women having babies, and they were in strife with one another, and they were trying to outdo one another. They were battling for Jacob's love. They were also battling to see who could have the most babies, because that they thought that was what gave them value. And finally, at the very end of that passage, verse 24 of Genesis 30, Rachel finally has her own son, not a surrogate son, not a son from a maid, but her own son. She named him Joseph. And so at this point, there's a corner that's turned. So at Joseph's birth, finally, she has a natural son. Jacob has a natural son from his loved wife, the wife that he loved initially, and the one that I'm sure he thought the seed would come through, Rachel. And what we're going to see as we look at the rest of the book of Genesis is both Joseph and Benjamin, who Rachel's going to have later on. Those 2 children hold a very special place in Jacob's heart. It's almost, I don't know if I'd say he loved them more than the rest of the boys, but by the things that Jacob says and does with his family, you could make that case. They're very special to him. Maybe he believes that Joseph is the promised son, the promised seed, whatever he's thinking in his mind. He's completed his 14 years now of serving for these wives, and he wants to go home. So this is, like I said, it's a very strange story. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the story first, and we're going to try to explain some of the things that are difficult to explain in it, and then we'll come back and we'll see how it applies to us. Y'all ready? Everybody good? Okay. So the first verses we see is, I can't see that at all. It says, as soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you. So Jacob's been here 14 years. He says, I've served my time. I've done what I was supposed to do, and now he's ready to go back to his home country. He's ready to go back to the land that God had promised him. Remember at Bethel, he said, I will bring you back to this land. So the land of his family, the land of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, he's polite here, but he's kind of demanding his family. He served his years fully. Why did he leave his land in the first place? Huh? He was running. And to find a bride. He was running from Esau, the wrath of Esau, and he was going to find a bride. So why was he serving? He says, I've served you all this time. Now I'm ready to go. You know the service I've given you. Why was he serving Laban? I can't hear you. Yeah, for them wives. He only wanted to serve 7 years for Rachel, and then Laban snuck Leah in on him, and so he gets another 7 years worth of service, so he'd have Rachel as well. So now he's saying, my service is done. Okay, I've been here. Obviously, he's been here 14 years, 7 for Leah, 7 for Rachel, and he no longer owes any obligation to Laban, and he wants to go home to his family, go home to his land, go home to the promised land. Why do you think he wants to go home? To see his mama. You're probably right about that, actually. He probably wants to. He loved his mother. His mother loved him, you know. Mother loved him more than Esau. Father loved Esau more than Jacob. Probably right. But also, remember Bethel? God told him, I'm going to bring you back to the land. I'm going to prosper you. I'm going to do all these. The promises of God, the promises of prosperity, of family, of the land being given to him, all of those things are probably still running through his mind. And so since he no longer owes Laban any obligation, he comes and says, hey, give me my family, give me my wives, and let me go. But he talks to Laban kind of like a servant would, doesn't he? I mean, he demands, give me my wives and my children, for I have served you that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you. You kind of see a hint of how Jacob feels in this. If reading that last line in verse 26, how would you say Jacob feels now that he is done with his service? Toward Laban, toward this whole situation. He certainly doesn't trust him. He got swindled by him. Resentful. Yeah, he's resentful. I mean, I would be. He's resentful. He's tired. He's ready to go home. That's after 14 years. I think it would have took me a whole lot less time than 14 years to get that way. And so what happens now is Laban is going to make a plea for Jacob to stay. He says, this is a very strange way to put it too. It's both in Hebrew and in English. It's just a strange sentence. Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. It's almost like he didn't finish the first part of the sentence. Maybe if I have found favor in your sight, that's a common phrase used all through the Old Testament. Maybe he's saying, please just listen to me. If you'll listen for 1 second. If I found favor in your sight, let me talk to you for just a minute. He said, I've learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it. Laban does not want him to leave. Why does he not want him to leave? It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, he has prospered, buddy. Laban is doing great these 14 years because of because God's blessing is on Jacob. Now, he says, this is where we can talk about what you think he means here, because there's some controversy about what he's saying here. He says, I have divined that Yahweh has blessed me through you, because of you. He says, I've learned through divination. What's divination? Anybody know? Yeah, it's witchcraft, pagan sorcery, pagan religion, doing the animal bone. I mean, I don't know if Laban's doing the animal bones, but anything like that. Anything mystical, trying to figure out the will of the gods, things like that. All that pagan, idolatrous stuff. He says, I've learned through this divination that he says Yahweh, the name Yahweh. He says, Yahweh has blessed me because of you. Now, Laban is certainly a pagan. When Rachel and Jacob do leave, Rachel's going to steal some of Laban's household gods. So we know that Laban is not devoted to Yahweh. He is a pagan, and he's praying to these gods, no doubt, all these kind of things. My question, though, is this true? Do you think through divination of whatever he's doing, sorcery, witchcraft, that's what we would call it today, do you think God actually spoke to him and said, I'm blessing you through Jacob, through this practice of divination? Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, it's possible, but I just have a hard time with that. I have a hard time with that. And the main reason I think he's lying. I think he's lying and he's scheming to get Jacob to stay. The main reason I think he's lying because I don't think Jacob believes him. Look at what Jacob answers. He says, Jacob said to him, you know yourself how I served you and how your livestock has fared with me, for you had a little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord, Yahweh, has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own house? It's almost in verse 29 and 30, the first part of 30, it's almost like Jacob said, you didn't divine anything. All you did is saw what happened. I came and you had very little, and now I've been here 14 years and you got a whole bunch. And Jacob says, it is definitely God that has done this, but you didn't need to divine it or to have some spiritual awakening about what happened. All you got to do is look around. I mean, you know that Abraham, Isaac, and me, my family, we serve Yahweh. And I think Laban might just be, and I don't know this, I'm just kind of putting myself in the story, I think Laban might be just using some religious language about Yahweh to kind of draw Jacob in and try to keep him working for it. So it's possible that God spoke to him through this divination, but I doubt it. If you have a King James version, it says, I've learned through experience. So that's how they translate that word. But more often than not, it's translate divination. And so that's how we take it. So, in my opinion, I don't think God told him anything. I think he's using God to kind of bring Jacob along with him. So he's scheming. And Jacob responds, no, there's no need for divination. You've seen it. You've seen it because I've come and you had a little, and now you got a whole lot of things, and it's been blessed. And Jacob rightly affirms that it is God who has been blessing. It is the Lord. It is Yahweh. And he affirms the fact that Yahweh has blessed Laban because of me. He says there, you had a little before I came, and it has increased abundantly as the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. So it is because of me. So in this deal, Laban is really I think he's being conniving. I think he's being, he's got a plan. He wants to keep Jacob there so he can be blessed. But he's really speaking more than he knows that he's speaking. I mean, he's correct. However he came to it, whether he's lying as far as the divination part, he is speaking better than he knew. He acknowledges that God is the one that's blessing Jacob. But he doesn't desire God, it doesn't seem. He doesn't desire God. He doesn't desire the blessing of God. What does Laban want? Yeah, he wants the prosperity. He wants the blessings, the riches. He wants the stuff to keep coming. And the only way to do that is to keep Jacob here. If I can keep Jacob here and God is blessing him or whatever's going on, it'll be mine. He wants the prosperity to continue. Just like Laban's daughters that we saw last week and their idolatry toward Jacob's love and beating their sister in the baby war. Laban is an idolater as well, and he loves his riches more than anything else. And really, that's not hard for us to grasp because we've seen it from the very beginning. Laban is a cheat and a scoundrel and all of those things, and all he cares about is riches. You kind of see his heart here. I mean, if it's true, I think that Laban really does believe that it is Jacob's God who has prospered him. I don't believe that he realized that through divination, but I do believe that he believes that it's Jacob's God, and Jacob affirms the fact that it is his God that has prospered him. Why wouldn't Laban want Jacob's God to be his God? If his God is blessing him in this way, and I don't have anything until he gets here and it starts prospering, why wouldn't Laban want this God who blesses so richly? Any idea? I mean, I don't know either. I'm just asking.
Same way it is today. Why wouldn't people want what we have?
Yeah. So, yeah. He wants what he can get out of Jacob's God, not Jacob's God himself. He wants the favor. He wants the blessing. And Laban certainly doesn't fear God at all, because the first thing he's going to do when they make this deal is he's going to cheat Jacob again. So if he really believed that God's favor is upon Jacob and that's the reason why he's blessed, he certainly doesn't fear him, because he's going to do Jacob really dirty. And so he says to him, Jacob says, look, I'm ready to go, and all this blessing that has happened over the last 14 years, you've been the beneficiary of it. I still don't have anything. I have no household. The only thing I have is my wives, and I have my children. That's it. All of the prosperity, all of the flocks, all of the herds, all of everything that God has blessed in the prosperity department has gone to Laban. And so what we see here is he says, look, I'm ready to build my household. And then in the next verse, Laban is getting desperate. He doesn't want Jacob to leave. And he says, I'm willing to pay you whatever you want. He's that hungry for riches and wealth and blessing. He says, what shall I give you? And Jacob answers, you shall not give me anything. You will do this for me. If you do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. And then he tells him what to do here in just a minute. So Laban wants riches. He wants Jacob's blessing. He wants the God blessing Jacob to come to him. But Jacob has heard his spiel before. What will I give you? What shall I give you? You don't want any wages, okay? So he's not talking about working for me. He's not talking about wages anymore. Now he's saying, just tell me what I can give you to make you stay. I'll give you something. I'll give you part of these riches, or I'll give you part of this stuff. I'll give you whatever. And Jacob says, no, you're not going to give me anything, because I think in my mind, Jacob's heard this spill before. You know, the last time he made a deal with Laban, he got swindled out of 7 years, got hooked up with a wife that he didn't love, and all of this turmoil is going on in his family. But Jacob wants to build his household. So now he has many sons. That promise has come true, but he still has no wealth whatsoever, no household. Laban has received all these benefits. So Jacob's blessed status has worked well for Laban. He came with nothing, and Jacob came to Laban with nothing, and he still has nothing really as far as prosperity goes. He's got his family. So Jacob refuses, and Laban says, look, I'm not giving up. I'll give you whatever you want. What can I give you? And Jacob refuses. Here he probably, like I said, he probably remembered, this guy's a swindler. Last time I made a deal with him, he cheated me. But Jacob is pretty crafty himself. Jacob is a cheater as well. Jacob is a swindler as well. We've seen that through his lifestyle. So Jacob says, I'll tell you what, I'll stay and I'll tend your flocks, but I'm going to set the terms of the deal. I have an idea of how we can figure this out. So Jacob says, I'm going to set the terms. He has a plan. I think Jacob he's trying to play the game with Laban. He's trying to outfox the fox. In verse 32, he says, let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and the black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. So Jacob comes up with this plan. The plan is, you give me all the rare animals. That's kind of what he's asking for. So the speckled and spotted, those would have, now these are things that I've read from people that are experts in the ancient Near East. I don't know them to be true for a fact, but this is the common consensus, is that they would have been rare in the herd. Most of the sheep and goats were solid white or gray. Most of the goats were dark colored, but most of the sheep were solid white or gray. And I also read that in the ancient Near East, a shepherd's wage, if you were to hire a shepherd, would be 10 to 20% of the flock, the offspring that the herd had. Now, I don't know that for a fact either, but if that's true, Jacob is asking for a whole lot less than what the normal shepherding wage would be. He's asking for just the rare animals, just the ones that are spotted and speckled, what would have been seen as the inferior animals. Because, they sheared them for wool and all. Okay, y'all got that. Y'all with me? Man, y'all like, man, what am I doing here? Talking about shepherding sheep and spotted animals. So, if this is true, and I don't really have any reason to doubt it, I don't have any direct knowledge, but these are things that I read. If this is true, then the rare sheep he's asking for wouldn't even been close to a normal wage. He's working for rare animals, and so immediately Laban agrees, like, shoot, yeah, let's do that. He says, good, let it be as you said. It sounds like a great deal for Laban. What does Laban want more than anything? Money. He wants riches. He wants wealth. He wants prosperity in his herds and his family, and he wants to grow a big clan and be a wealthy man and all those kind of things. So he says, shoot, yeah, that's a great idea. He thinks he's getting a great deal. And this deal that Jacob has proposed would also protect Jacob. Now, Jacob remembers what kind of man Laban is. At any point, Laban could charge him with stealing some of his herd. Your herd's way too big. You must have stole these things. So Jacob says, only the spotted, the striped, the speckled, only those animals will be in my herd. So if at any time you come and there's animals that are not those in my herd, then you can say that I stole them. His idea is foolproof. And Laban says, yeah, let's do that. And the first thing Laban does is cheat Jacob out of any animals. He says, but that day, I wonder if it was like that hour. Laban's like, okay, let's do that. I'll be right back. And he goes and removed all the male goats that were striped and spotted. Notice it says all. The male goats that were striped and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And then Jacob pastured the rest of his Laban's flock. That last phrase we'll look at in just a minute. So Laban says, yes, so let's do that. And the first thing he does is cheat Jacob again. Man, this guy is a piece of work. If he thought that God himself was blessing Jacob, I don't understand how he could cheat Jacob to exploit Jacob's blessing if he thought that the God that Jacob serves is so mighty that he has blessed him in all these things. He doesn't fear this God at all, it would seem. I mean, Jacob here is going to start off this deal that he made with Laban with nothing. And he moved all the speckled and spotted and striped and the black lambs and all that. He moved them 3 days away. Why would he move them 3 days away? Huh? Yeah, so they couldn't breed. They couldn't interbreed together, but also, so Jacob wouldn't find them. Jacob 3 days away, he's not gonna trek 3 days in any direction to see if he can find some sheep that he don't know where they are. And so Laban is ensuring by his actions that his own flock is the only flock that's going to increase. Jacob's flock is only speckled, only striped, only rare animals, and that flock is not going to increase. And if it does increase, it's 3 days away with my son, so he's never going to know about it. And so he's cheated Jacob again, and when Laban's animals breed, there may be some speckled and striped, there may be recessive genes in those sheep, so there may be some, but it won't be many. It won't be many. It'll just be a few. He is padding his own pockets. And then you see this amazing statement. So it says at the end of verse 36, he did all these things, and it just says Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob didn't say anything. That's an amazing statement. Jacob is a conniver as well, but he's not stupid. I mean, Jacob's been tending this flock for 14 years. There's no way that Jacob didn't know what Laban did. Can you imagine, Jacob goes out to the flock to get his speckled sheep, and he's like, wow, there ain't none. There were yesterday. Wonder what happened to them all, But he doesn't say anything. He doesn't say anything. He just continues quietly to tend Laban's flock. You see it there? The rest of Laban's flock. Not his flock, not his sheep, not his rare animals, not his spotted animals. He just continues to shepherd his sheep. It looks like from this text that Laban has outwitted Jacob again. Swindled him out of 7 years of service. Now he's cheated him out of all the speckled animals. Jacob has started this deal with Laban with absolutely 0 animals. All of them are gone. And this text, Jacob, that's really small. Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. What does that make Jacob seem like? I mean, it seems like a good thing, but what is it like? How would you describe that? Well, stupid, yeah, I guess. But Jacob's not stupid. He's very crafty. He's very conniving. It almost makes it seem like Jacob is just this, he's just this mild, honorable man. Yes, I've been swindled, but I did make a deal, and so I'm going to. But that's not the case at all. Jacob's heart. We know Jacob's heart. There is something that we don't know in this text, in this chapter, and you won't find it out until the next chapter. So let me show you this. When Jacob's just in the next chapter, chapter 31, verses, we'll probably read 9 through whatever, Jacob is getting ready to leave. It's been 6 more years, and he's meeting his wives, and he's saying, look, we're leaving. We're going back to the homeland of my father. He says, your father has cheated me. He's changed my wages 10 times. And then he says this in chapter 31, starting in verse 9. He says, he told his wives all these things, and he says, thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. We're going to see Jacob prosper in a moment. But then he says this, in the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see, all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. Jacob had previous knowledge when he made this deal. God told him all of the animals were going to be born striped and spotted and mottled. Just, I guess that means, what do you call that? Mixed. So that gives us a little context as to why Jacob said, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let me go and just pick all the striped animals out of the deal. Let me go pick all the spotted ones, and that'll be my wages. God told him in a dream that all of the animals were going to be spotted and striped. And it also gives us a clue as to why Jacob said, okay, there's none here now for some unknown reason, but I'm going to go ahead and just continue with the flock because God told him that all the animals are going to be born with striped and those things. And so they would be his animals. And so what he did, where am I at here? Oh, I'm just reading that. Okay. And so Jacob knew beforehand. He knew beforehand what God would do because God told him in a dream, and he relates this story to his wives later. And so Jacob made this deal in the first place because of this. God showed him what is. But then, if he knows that God told me that all the animals were going to be striped and spotted and yada, 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 it makes what happens next just really strange. And we're going to have to talk about it because it's strange. We could take it one or two ways, and we'll look at that. Jacob tended the flock, and the next thing it says is, then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, peeled the bark off and made white streaks, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Now, this activity that Jacob's doing by peeling sticks and, making it striped and all these kind of things, that is a folk custom of the day. If you put something before the eyes of the animals that are breeding, it would affect the offspring that would come. It's nothing more than superstition. It doesn't, of course, it doesn't work. It's nothing more. It's kind of like the mandrakes that we saw last week. They don't do what they're supposed to do, but it's this wives' tale, this superstition that's going on. Why would he do this, do you think? He knows that God's told him. Why would he do this? Maybe. She said maybe to tell Laban because Laban believes in divination. But if he did that, that would make Jacob seem more like a scoundrel, like he's doing it on purpose. I think that's probably right. There's two ways to look at it, but I see it that way. She said she thought it's just a lack of faith. God said it, but I need to cover my bases. I need to hedge my, just in case God doesn't come through. I'm going to do this other thing too. It's nothing more than superstition. But here's the amazing part. Verse 39, it's working. Or is it working? So you got two choices here. And I've already told you what I think, but it's either God using this crazy superstitious practice to bless him and just making it happen, or it's God using this, in that case it's a miracle, or it is God blessing Jacob by doing what he said in spite of this foolishness that Jacob's doing. I tend to lean toward the second deal, that God is blessing because God promised, and Jacob is just demonstrating. It's strange because he had to have at least a little faith to make the deal, and he had to have a little faith when Laban took all the spotted animals out. And now Jacob don't have any spotted animals. He had to keep on going and to keep saying, "Okay, I'm gonna shepherd your flock anyway." He had to have a little faith it was going to happen, but then he resorts to this. Well, just in case God doesn't come through, might as well hedge your bets, might as well cover your bases, and just fallback plan just in case it doesn't work. You with me? Okay. And so then, after that, Jacob does what any shepherd would do. He starts selectively breeding. It says Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart, so when the speckled and the spotted and the stripes are born, he separated them out from Laban's sheep. And he did not put them with Laban's flock. So he's kind of selectively breeding. And he also, whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. So he's doing like what any person in animal husbandry or any, breeding these animals. But he's got this superstitious thing with these sticks going on. It's just, man, it just boggles the imagination. For us in modern times, we know about breeding and genes and recessive genes and dominant genes and all that kind of stuff. It just seems really dumb. It just seems really, really stupid that you think just by looking at a stick they would have a certain kind of offspring. But the big question in here, is why? Why are the animals born that favor Jacob and not Laban? It's because God. We know it's because God, and Jacob knows it's because of God. He says, we just read in chapter 31, he said, God caused Laban's flock to be my flock. God caused me to He does admit that it is God, but why does Moses, who's writing this, report this stick thing? What do we need to learn from the stick experiment or whatever it is, I guess? Explain.
Not kind of trusting God's promise, but always saying, I've got to help it along. I need to do something. It's really me that's carrying out God's promise, when I think that's why all the flock was stripped from it, so that Jacob really didn't have that.
Yeah, that's true.
So you take all these out of here, and all of a sudden it's just the wife out of it can only be God.
Yeah. So to repeat that for anybody watching online, John said that he's doing the same thing that Abraham and Isaac and all of them did. They trust the promise of God, but they feel like they need to help it out a little bit. I need to do this in order for God's promise to, remember Abraham, I need to go into Hagar in order for God's promise to be fulfilled. And Isaac and all of these different things. Isaac's trying to give the blessing to Esau. All of this stuff happened. They thought, and Jacob thinks, I think you're correct, that God is faithful and I trust Him, but I'm going to hedge my bets because He probably just needs a little help getting it done. It might be impossible for God, so therefore I'm going to help. But God, of course, in this episode is just as faithful as He's always been. Abraham, Isaac, and now to Jacob. God is faithful despite Jacob's superstition. Jacob is, especially in this episode, Jacob is a walking contradiction. I mean, he has the blessing of God. He has the covenant of God. He has the promise of God. We find out in the next chapter that we just read, he has communication with God. God's telling him. I mean, it's not something, well, I hope it will. God is specifically telling Jacob in a dream, this is what I'm going to do. He has all of this, but also Jacob is a scoundrel. He loves himself. He's sinful. I mean, he did take the deal, showing that he had some faith in the promise. Even when Laban cheated him, he still took care of the sheep, believing, I assume, that he would have speckled sheep and striped sheep and all those kind of things. But when it came time to act, when it came time to do the work, when it came time to walk in what God had promised him and that he knew was going to happen, he acts, I don't even like saying it this way, but it's almost like he acts a little bit in faith and a little bit in superstition. A little bit, God's gonna bless because He gave me the dream. He told me it was gonna happen. But just in case, I'm gonna have a fallback plan just in case God can't get it done.
He may have been trying to trick Laban too to teach this favorite husbandry to Laban's workers. Maybe to explain it that way. I have no idea.
Maybe so. I hadn't thought about that. He's saying maybe he's trying to explain it, because he does this for 6 years. We're going to see that flocks are growing for 6 years, and maybe he's using that as a explanation as to why it's happening. But I go back to what I said earlier. If that's the case, that would tick Laban off, I think. He'd be mad. Like, what? You stop it. You're messing the deal up. So what you see in Jacob, this walking contradiction, we see in our lives a lot. I believe God's promise. But somewhere in my heart, I just believe my actions need to help God secure it. I believe God's promise, but when this cheat is trying to take away everything that I have or trying to swindle me, I have to act because God somehow is not going to be able to do this in these circumstances. I mean, that's not true, but that might be what he's thinking. We think that way sometimes. We think, I do believe, but man, I need to help God out a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do anything. Jacob's not, he's not laying back and just not doing the work of a shepherd because he said, God's gonna bring sheep if he brings sheep, or he's not. He's doing the work of a shepherd, but he's adding this pagan superstition, this stuff that's just, it just seems like it is an inherent lack of faith in there somewhere. But Jacob also has shown us glimmers of faith as he's taken Laban's deal and continued with the flock even though Laban cheated him. Did his actions, I've already asked that question really. I was going to ask if his actions came from faith when he put the sticks and the stripes and the things out there. I don't think so. I don't think so. In the last verse in this section, it says, "Thus the man increased," Jacob increased greatly, "and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, camels and donkeys." Where did the servants and the camels and the donkeys come from? He's a shepherd of sheep and goats. Where did all that come from? Huh? Yeah, trading. He's so prosperous with his sheep, he's trading, he's buying things. And if a person, I told you this when we saw Isaac's servant come to, or Abraham's servant come to find Isaac a wife, camels are the sign of a rich person. Because camels are only good for one thing, and that's transportation. You can't get milk from them. I don't know. Can you get milk from a camel? I don't know. You can't. You don't eat them. They don't give you anything. All they're good for is transportation across long distances and desert. So they're transporting goods, services, all those kind of things. So Jacob has become wealthy. Jacob has become prosperous. And what we see in this text is the same thing we saw with Abraham in his struggles and his deal with Isaac. God alone is faithful. And I want you to see that God doesn't always use pleasant circumstances to bring His blessing to pass. There is nobody in this story, not Laban, not Jacob, not the wives, not the children. We'll see them in a couple of chapters. Nobody's righteous. Nobody's faithful. Nobody's worthy. But God brings His blessing to pass, not because Jacob is good, because God is good. Not because Jacob is faithful, because God is faithful. God is going to bless Jacob the same way He did Abraham, the same way He did Isaac. In the next chapter, we'll see that He did this shepherding for 6 years. And when Jacob arrived at Laban's 20 years ago, he had nothing. He worked for 14 years for his wives and still had nothing but family, but the wives and all the children. But in these last 6 years, after these, God's going to send him back home to his homeland, and he's going to have an empire. He's going to have riches and blessing and wealth. God is going to bring His promise to pass with Jacob. And God brings His greatest blessings through the most difficult circumstances. This is, although Jacob's not worthy of anything good happening to him, he's done a lot of bad things, and we'll see him very soon as he's on his way back. That's when I believe he's changed, when he's wrestling with God and God changes his name. But Jacob is, I forgot what I was going to say. Jacob, somebody tell me what I was going to say. He's not worthy. He's not worthy of all this. He's not worthy of the blessings. He's not worthy of God but God has made a promise. God has made a promise. And it's through these difficult circumstances. He's been cheated. He's worked for 14 years when he should have only worked for 7. He's been cheated out of the deal that he made here. At every step of the way, Jacob has faced hard circumstances, unfair things. He's experienced the ire of the world. He's experienced the wickedness of evil men trying to stop him. And at each point, God has blessed him through these horrible circumstances. It's not mandrakes and it's not striped branches that brought all this stuff to pass. It's not even good breeding practices. God has kept His promise. And Jacob will acknowledge that in the next chapter. He says, God did it. And for us, He promises us an inheritance too. He promises us blessing too. Through the ultimate seed of Abraham, Jesus Christ. And I want you to see, as we wind up here, is that just like Jacob, whether you want to admit it or not, often we are walking contradictions as well. We believe, but we say, God, help my unbelief. We believe, but we think we got to help the promise. We got to, I believe it's going to come to pass. I believe all things work together for good, but not this. Anything but this situation. How are we going to get out of this situation? How are we going to be relieved of this suffering? How can God do what He promised He would do with all of this happening in my life? We think we got to fix things, and we've got to, it doesn't mean we don't act. It doesn't mean we don't, do things to make things better. But our faith and our trust sometimes wavers from, I know God said this in His Word, but whenever someone says, I know God says this in His Word, but whatever that comes after that but is foolishness. God said it in His Word. It will come to pass. It is true. And I got to tell you, when you realize and we recognize the fact, it's not an opinion, it's a fact, that all of us are walking contradictions. All of us are sinners. All of us still battle with the flesh, even though the Spirit of God lives in us. The Spirit wars against the flesh in us all if we're believers. To see God be faithful and to keep His promise to this scoundrel Jacob, that's good news for us. Because it means that there's nothing hidden from the sight of God. God knows exactly who Jacob is. He knew exactly who Abraham was. He knew exactly who Isaac was in the failings and the sins and the things that they were going to do. And He loved them anyway. He loves us anyway. He gives us His perfect and pure promises anyway. When Jesus saved you, if Jesus saved you 30 years ago, He knew that 45 years from the day that He saved you, you're going to do something really stupid and sinful. And He saved you anyway. When He saved you, He knew what was going to be in your heart and in your mind for the entirety of your earthly life. And He saved you anyway. And He loved you anyway. And He gave you His perfect and precious promise anyway. That is good news for us who are in Christ. Questions, comments?
He also knows the Latans who aren't in Christ, and He protects us or He guides us.
Yeah. You may come across a Laban that may take advantage of you, that may bring suffering into your life. God knows that as well. There is nothing in heaven and earth or hell underneath the earth that can keep God's promise from coming to pass.
This also shows of God's faithfulness and provision and how when Abraham left, he had very little.
Mm-hmm.
He traveled, he gained more. And since God is sending Jacob out by himself with nothing, He's bringing him back with wealth, just like Joseph leaves with nothing.
Right.
And how the slaves left with nothing, but He provided
Yeah.
wealth if they were going to need.
I didn't think of that, but that's true. It's kind of a pattern, isn't it? So Abraham leaves with nothing and is prospered by God. She said, Jacob, same way, leaves with nothing, prospered by God. Did you say Joseph? Joseph goes to Egypt with nothing, prospered by God. Yeah, there's a pattern there.
I think the modern version of this false belief that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize is that God helps those who help themselves. Think that a lot of folks think it's actually in that word,
Yeah,
but it's just like, God, sure, God's going to give it to me after I scrape the.
yeah. She said the modern version of thinking the way Jacob is thinking is God helps those who help themselves, which is not in Scripture anywhere. And we think that we have to help in order to receive the blessing, to receive the good that God has promised us. The good that He's promised us doesn't mean we'd never suffer, of course. It means we experience the blessing of relationship with God, the blessing of all the things that He has promised us in His Word. So yeah, to be honest, it's only the legalist and the Pharisee who this is really depressing for. For the rest of us who know that we're sinners and we know that we're unworthy and we know that we can't measure up to God's law, it's some pretty good news right here. That Jesus paid it all and all to Him I owe. We owe Him our worship and praise. We owe Him the glory He deserves because He's given us everything. Any more questions? All right, let's pray. Father, we love You. We thank You today for, God, we thank You for who You are. We thank You for just the blessings of knowing You, the blessings of being brought into Your family by the blood of Your Son. God, we know that we cannot do anything on our own. We know that we cannot aid You in keeping Your word. We cannot aid You in providing for Your promise. In fact, we always get in the way when we try. God, forgive us for our sin. Forgive us for our thinking so highly of our abilities and ourself. We know, God, that's not a formula that means we don't do anything. We just lay on the couch and let You do Your thing. No, we act as well. We walk this out, God, but we walk it out in faith. God, our actions and our things we do, they spring from our faith that You are accomplishing Your word. And so, God, we can have assurance. God, I pray that You would embed this truth in our heart, and I pray that You would help us to walk it out in our lives as we seek to glorify You and make Your name known. In Jesus' name, amen. I got to go turn that